So I got plenty of questions for you. So there's not going to be a dry moment in this conversation.
Okay, cool.
There's not going to be a dry moment in this conversation.
All right, let's get into it. Bobby,
Yes.
you just absolutely smashed a men's retreat. I think it was like a couple months ago.
November.
What did you find during that retreat that men were struggling with the most? That's the first thing I want to know. And then I want to know what helped them the most.
The thing that they struggled with the most was coincidentally the solution that helped them, which was what I observed and felt was that these guys didn't necessarily have a container of men that they could be extremely transparent, honest, and fully who they were. And this space for them was exactly that. And so the solution for them was being in a room, in an environment where they could say what was close to their heart. They could be truthful. They could be honest. They could feel that they weren't being judged. So it was beautiful to witness. And honestly, it served as a reminder to me, and I'm sure you can relate to this with the work you do and some of the stuff we discussed at the Run Club the other morning, which is I take for granted my reality. Like I just told you when I got here, last night I was in here recording a podcast. 6 p.m. on a Friday night, I was in here recording a podcast. 5 years ago, 6 p.m. on a Friday, I'm at the bar and I'm getting the night started, right? So my reality is different. My reality of where I live today is just all about growth and adventure and well-being. And I take it for granted. And being in that environment was like a reminder to me of how important environments are for people, and more specifically for the guys that were there. So for them and some of the breakthroughs and transformation I saw, these guys were sharing things close to heart that like people that they maybe have known for 10 years didn't even know. And within 48 hours, they were open. Within 24 hours, they were opening up the deepest, darkest truths. And I like take that with so much gratitude because it just shows what we were able to create. Not me, but what we as a collective were able to create.
Man, I got such a question for you. Do you think that before you got into this work, and when you said, you'd be at the bar ready to get the night started, do you think Bobby 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago, that was going on?
Well, I use that as just like but I stopped drinking 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah. So let's just go 5 years ago when you were sending it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So let's say Bobby 5 years ago. Let's say he went to one of your retreats but had no idea what the hell he was going to get into. Do you think that what you experienced then at that age would have just changed everything?
It's a great question. I would have been extremely open-minded to it. At that point, 5 years ago, I was pretty deep into the self-improvement, spiritual, like trying to, live and create my own life. The difference is I would for sure have only been able to have been an attendee to a retreat. There was no way, looking back on it in hindsight, that I would have felt comfortable or confident to be operating from a place of guiding or leading or curating that environment. So I do believe I would have thrived in that environment because I was already kind of walking this path of reading self-help books, listening to the podcast, running my own podcast, trying to build, my own brand. But I was nowhere near ready to hold that type of space for other guys.
Do you think if you participated in it though, like if you are a participant and you shared the shit that those men shared, within that time, do you think that would have freed you up to get you to hear more quickly?
I don't, there are certain things that came up in the last 1.5, 2 years that I've shared publicly, which more so is dealing with like being sexually assaulted when I was a kid. And that was something I like really did some work on 1.5, 2 years ago, started the process of it. And so I share that to say, if I was in that environment back then, that wouldn't have came on my awareness. I don't think I would have even thought about that experience because it was so deep in me that unless someone else talked about a similar experience, which, unless someone else had shared an experience like that, it maybe would have been like, ooh, wait, I actually have that hidden within me. So I don't know. I think what I do know is being in those environments, regardless, is going to open you up, is going to shine light on shadows. And whatever I was battling with 5 years ago, that type of container would have opened me up or made me feel more seen or heard or loved or cared for. So
yeah,
there's no questions asked.
Yeah, it's so crazy, hey, because I always think about this myself, and I'm like, well, we go to the gym, we get bigger, stronger muscles. You start running, you can run further, harder, longer, and you can achieve amazing things. But then when it comes to genuine quality of life, so many men just shove their emotions like under the rug and they just stuff them. Even these experiences, as you said, because I relate to you. I had something very similar happen to me when I was a kid as well. And we don't realize that the masks that we create come from that exactly. Yeah. Well,
I am actually loving this dynamic right now because you're in town from Australia, which is, I could spend the rest of this conversation talking about Aussie, but you guys seem like you live an elite lifestyle down there. But what, something that I've been like learning over the last few years is really to like let go of this narrative that I maybe was not directly raised in an environment, but with society in the American culture of a man, keeps his feeling to himself. He does what he needs to do. He's a hardworking physical labor man, right? Maybe the American dream of what we painted as, what the masculine male is. I don't know what that looked like growing up in Australia and what maybe the narratives.
I can tell you really quickly.
Please.
I can tell you really quickly. So it's same thing. Either go to uni or work really hard and get a trade, buy a house, have a kid, settle down. Yeah.
So it's probably the through line across anywhere in the world. It's probably very similar.
Well, I think Australia adopt everything Americans do. So we're like 1 or 2 years behind because everyone's watching the movies and stuff. So when you guys have trends or whatever, I guess the internet sped that up a lot. But I feel like usually we're about like whatever trend's going on a year later. Wow. Australia's like, yeah. So it's literally exactly the same, culturally just a tiny bit different.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. That is a good understanding for me, just knowing that it was just similar no matter what. It's the environment of what the masculine male is. So to bring it back to what you're saying, it's like that's what I think is happening in real time right now, especially in conversations like this and the content and the work that you're doing, I'm doing is it's making the emotions of men be something that is like you can talk about these things. And I'll say one of my biggest weaknesses that I saw in myself growing up, I was super self-conscious about it. I judged myself for it. Was I recognized I was a very emotional boy, and I have grown to a very emotional man. And for the longest time in my life, I thought that was an absolute weakness. Like things would trigger me and make me feel sad, or I feel like things that would make me cry maybe wouldn't make some of my guy friends growing up cry, and I judged myself heavily. It wasn't until really in the last few years where I actually took a moment to recognize I think that's one of my greatest strengths. And I'm proud that I'm an emotional being. I'm an emotional male because I feel things deeply. And for the longest time, I thought that was such a weakness.
Well, do you think that a lot of men in general are like that, but they hide it?
I think a lot of men have emotions, but are just scared to release them. And I think it all connects back to just the environment, their childhood, mom, dad, or whoever the parental figure was, their cousins, the people around, like how did they welcome those emotions? I don't know. I was fortunately in an environment where both of my parents were very open to emotions, and there wasn't this extreme masculinity or extreme femininity in the household. So I could share things, and I didn't. I definitely was up until I probably left for college, I kept things my parents separate. I can't tell my parents about certain things, right? And then once I got to college, I was like, wait a second, I'm an adult now. I can tell them things, and if they don't agree or love it, I can be truthful with them. I don't have to hide things. So even to the masculine male that could be listening or is out there, he feels something. It's just whether he wants to admit it or he wants to share it. But there's something that will come up. It's the response of, does he immediately just dig it and push it away? or does he allow himself to actually feel into it and see what comes up from that?
So I'm so interested in this. So for the men that you know, that you've worked with, you've talked with, the ones who don't allow themselves the skill of emotional intelligence to be able to learn, feel, navigate, what happens?
Just bubbles. I mean, I don't even have to speak on them. I can speak on myself. Even, I can sit here and say, I'm a very emotional aware person, but there has been a huge growth in me over the last few years where I would still keep emotions to myself, more specifically in my relationship with my partner. Yeah, like I just need to swallow this. I need to be the masculine and just like not communicate how I feel because I'm afraid of how she might respond, which is just complete BS. Like her response is not my responsibility. My responsibility is to actually say how I feel. And so I would dig, bury. And then all of a sudden this thing just pops off and it blows up into something bigger, or the resentment starts to build, or the anger or the frustration. And it's like, it's building because you're not saying anything. So, I can sit here and talk about the clients I've worked, but I don't even need to point fingers at them. I can point the finger at myself and say, you got to practice what you preach, which is true. Like I am always a work in progress. A great quote that I heard long ago that I have forever loved is always the student, never the master. I'm not going to sit here just because we're on a podcast and act like I'm the guy that has all the answers. I don't. I'm just, from the jump, have always been willing to kind of share what I learn along the way and hope it resonates or connects with someone.
So if you don't mind sharing, then like what ways do you think when you would shove your like emotions in and down, how would they then show up in your relationship? And I just want to preface this as well, like being a business owner, and I went through a breakup recently as well. So I understand like what happens in regards to this emotional shit is, for me, the energy that was consumed in my relationship by not being able to in the moment communicate exactly how I felt just drained all my energy for work.
For sure.
Just drained all of it. And I didn't realize that. And I'm like, why? Things not working how I want them to work right now. And I was like, I'm exhausted, right? So, but I want to know for you how like the symptoms of stuffing emotions in would show up in your relationship.
What you just said, though, is so important, which is energy. The energy needs to go somewhere. So the frustration, the anger, the feeling annoyed, if it's not communicated, which I'm sure we can all think back on in moments in our lives, like just saying it out loud to someone or communicating to the person that is the problem, whatever it is, just saying it, you're like, like regardless of how they respond, you feel immediate tension off of your shoulders, right?
Yeah.
So the reverse is, if you don't, the tension sits in you and it builds and it builds and it builds. So the symptoms are exactly what I was just saying. It's like, once again, I'm speaking from experience. I consciously couldn't even understand that I was just building resentment or I was building anger. Because
what did your resentment look like? Like, how would you act out resentment in your relationship?
It wouldn't, I can't think of like a specific example, but it could just be as simple as like, if she was to ask me to do something, but I'm still angry at something that happened yesterday and I didn't communicate it. Now when she's asking me, in my mind, I'm thinking, but X, Y, and Z happened yesterday. Now you want me to do this? So now it's like I'm frustrated, or I'm communicating to her in like this non-loving communicative way. And then, it's like, wait, why are you so mad? So then it's just like, it just builds. And then as the non-communicating emotional being, nothing's wrong. Like I just played it off and would act like, I just would keep it to myself, and it would just build and build and build. And sometimes emotions would disappear, but some would just linger. And I think what I'd share with you at the coffee shop the other day when we had broken up for about 2 months, looking back on it now, having the 2 years later, doing a lot of work, the reason that bubbles was because there was a lot of resentment and non-communication. And so, of course, that finally becomes the breaking point where it's like, enough is enough. This just doesn't make sense. So, like, let's split our ways. All that most likely could have been avoided had, I can only own on my side, like, had I just spoken up and communicated things along the way.
Crazy. So do you feel that, like these circumstances in regards to resentment, that there's like a scared boy in you who's like, oh, these feelings or whatever it is are hard to feel. So the resentment that you build up is just like a wall of protection so that you don't get hurt?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard for me to say because so the context is important. The woman I'm engaged to is truly my first real relationship. And I have always been a direct, straight shooter with people for the most part. I think there were moments in my life where I would avoid conflict, and I've gotten much better over the last 2 years, not just because of the rebuild of the relationship, but my partner like calling me out and saying like, you should speak up and speak your truth to friendships. And so I've gotten much better, and that has been a game changer. But I was never put to the test really until I was in an intimate relationship with someone. Like, you have your arguments with parents, with family, with close loved ones, with friends, but an intimate partner, as you know, like it will breed a completely new version of you that you never saw was possible. And so, yeah, I can only say like that brought a lot of testing and learning and growing for me in a lot of different ways. And then, you know, I can't, it's not like I'm pointing the finger, but I really do believe the sexual assault when I was 12, I think that without me really being aware of it most of my life, like just taught me this skill of like either hiding things or acting like something never happened or just completely burying emotions. So once again, I say that from a place of I'm not blaming. I don't see that as like a reason or a scapegoat for anything that happens from this moment for the rest of my life that I can always be like, well, this happened when I was a kid. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like, I think I unconsciously like just built this skill of like hiding the deepest, darkest truth of my life. And I shared what had happened with 4 friends when it happened when we were 12, my best friends. We talked about it. After that moment, nothing was ever said until I was 12 then, probably not until I was 28 or 29. It was as if it never happened. So my opinion is that experience led to this place of not sharing emotions, hiding things.
It's just so much shadow work, isn't it?
Yeah. And honestly, part of that shadow work comes from a place of being able to start speaking on it. Yeah. And it was January of last year. At that point, I was probably 8 months in on really doing some work on it, like rediscovered it through therapy, then started to bring it to like family and close loved ones, my partner. And then I got to a place where I was like, I actually want to publicly talk about this because it's so aligned with all the work that I do. And I know it's going to have a ripple effect. And also selfishly, I knew it was going to be like like, let's just get this out of me. Like, let's just put this out there to the world. And so all that to say, part of the shadow work is in moments like this where I feel it come up, where there's an example, being able to confidently speak on it from a place of like, I don't judge I have no attachment to that happening to me anymore. Like, I don't judge myself. I don't feel resentment to my friend who did that. Like, it's not part of me. It doesn't define who I am.
Because you've like owned it.
I've owned it.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it wasn't a decision. Like, it weirdly gives me peace knowing that wasn't a decision I made.
You're so crazy because when the first time I had to share something that was hectic, I was at this retreat myself and was like, oh, we're going to share some shame right now. And they're like, you're going to share this shit that you've never, ever shared or told anyone before. And I remember this.
They set the frame like that.
Yeah. Like, no, not like before the actual process. They were just introduction of the day. They're like, and that's going to be like tomorrow night or some shit.
Gotcha.
And I remember I was thinking, I was like, no, the fuck, I'm not. I was like, there's no fucking way in hell that I'm sharing any of the things that have ever happened to me in those situations. There is no way in hell that that's going to happen. And then the way the container was set was very beautiful. It was very intentional. It was very safe. There was so much safety. And I was like, oh God, I have to like let this go. I have to let this go. And like this, I felt this fear in my chest that was so strong. It was like this dark purple energy that was just like in me. And like, as I even went to go to say something, like every part of my nervous system was like, no, don't say, as if I was just like pinned down by like 10 like jacked ass dudes, just like, don't say this shit. And it was just something happened between me and like some other little boys, and then I took it all home and happened with everyone, right? And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I was like, you're actually a kid. Like,
yeah.
You were just a kid when all that stuff happened. But I feel that there are so many people that have had experiences like that they don't feel comfortable enough to share.
For sure.
Or they feel so scared.
For sure.
It's like, what would you like encourage or say to those people? Because I know you're passionate about it as well.
Man. Well, I'm going to answer that, and then I actually want to come back to, I'm curious on your opinion on, I'm saying this out loud now so we don't forget, but I would love your opinion on what's the right way to set that container. Because there's a version that I like love, like, hey, we're going to share our biggest shames and darkest truths. But I also think there's a world where you create the container without saying it, and it happens naturally. Like the moments for the guys that were at my retreat, and I saw each of them get to that truth that has been so close to them. The frame wasn't, we're going to go there. It was the experience, the exercise that just allowed it. And probably it was the first person who was like willing to say something that created the confidence and ripple for everyone else. So I'd love to come back to that, because I think there's like the right way to do it. And there's also like, don't pressure people to fucking say it. And I'm not saying that's what it was, but I want to come back to that. The question was, how do you get people to speak these things, right? Is that was somewhat
pretty much.
Yeah, it's really hard, because once again, it goes back to what I was saying. I'm so grateful of the reality that I live in right now. Like, if I look at the 5 men that I'm closest to here in Austin, I could pick up the phone any hour, any day of the week and ask them like, hey, can you hold space for me right now? Full stop. And they would, if they were able to, they'd say, what's up? I could say literally anything, and I would be met with love and like, just like so much care, right? And that comes from 2 things. 1, being extremely mindful of the men I'm attracting into my life. But 2, it also comes from the confidence of being and willing to like go there with them, right? So I think for people, it's, can you find that one person that you can share these things with? And I think what's most important for me in these moments, when I, whether I'm sharing something or I'm setting a container for someone, is I've found like almost creating, I don't want to call it rules, but like some ground rules. Even in like the men's dinners that I host here in Austin, it's like, some of the stuff I may say may seem redundant, and you know this, but I also need to say it for those that need to be reminded. Like, you know, what is said here is going to stay here. You can be your most authentic self without judgment. There is no unsolicited advice given unless asked for, right? Like, so if I'm someone who has no one around me, or I feel like I need someone, that would be my first step, is find someone I trust and then say, hey, I need to share something with you, Corey, that has been really on my chest. I'm extremely scared to say it. I would really appreciate if you would keep this to yourself. Like, set the frame and kind of get the permission. Like, Corey, like, do you feel okay with that if we went there? And then you can, hopefully share it. But
yeah, one thing I want to touch on to that is like, just for people who might be thinking, I don't know about you, but for me, when I thought about, oh my God, sharing this stuff in general is just going to be insane, like, fuck this, there's no way, was being on the other end of when people actually fill you up after you've done that, and they create this like allow you to just receive from them, and it's encouragement and it's celebration, and you get met with love, and that moment that you said of just being like,
yeah. And it's interesting, and I'm sure you can agree, it's even being in the space of others opening up, you get lit up from it.
Oh,
because you're seeing transformation in real time, and it's like, it's like the most intoxicating drug.
It is.
I don't want to see these guys go through what they've gone through. I don't wish those experiences upon anyone, but to see someone be able to just say it and without any like judgment, it's beautiful.
Oh, bro, I agree. to get on your point when you mentioned, when you were asking me the question, I'll let you know, because we ended up creating, for like our retreats, we created like our own process for enabling this to happen.
Love.
And it is so intense. I'm not going to share, but it is like one of the most, it is so deep end that we're like, this is so hectic. We like took a few of the ones that we liked and just created our own, and it's absolutely brutal.
I love it.
But how we set the container is we don't do anything, you could say, like throughout the day, it's like something that we wouldn't do first, right? So there's like a lot of warm up and prep that takes the whole day to get to that specific moment. Yeah. And we set it as an invitation. So for you, I think it's just an invite. You don't actually have to share. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. You can just sit here and witness, and everyone's cool with that. So we get the permission from everyone. But what I think makes it the tightest, the first, is we go first. All facilitators go first.
You set the bar.
We set the bar. So, and I think that with that, we're like, okay, this is the process. This is what we're doing. We explain, this is what's going to happen. This is what it looks like in your body. This is what's going to happen in your nervous system. You may see someone go through this, right? Don't freak out. If you're seeing someone having trauma moving throughout their body, just be here support. And we teach people to hold space before doing it. This is what holding space looks like. Do not leave the room. If you leave, we're going to grab you and bring you back. Like while someone's going through something, unless we say there's a break and a pause, if anyone needs to leave, like leave. Because we're not here as witnesses. Like it's selfish while someone's going through their something to be going through their own. It's like, okay, we have to hold our process because this person's going through something, and we'll have our turn. Yeah. But so that's how we do it, and we kept it really tight. And our last one was we're like the most proud I've ever been of one of the exercises that we've run, because people were coming after that, come up and they're like, I was gonna share like one thing. I shared everything. Wow. So we were like,
but I really loved his. It's an invitation.
Yeah.
And that's something I took out of one of my friends here in Austin. I took out of his playbook, where even when I've chatted with him, instead of saying my advice, he would say, I would invite you to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like this gentle, like, for whatever reason, the way I interpret it is like, it's like an invitation, right?
Yeah.
You get the invite in the mail, and it's your choice of whether you show up or not. It's not like there's no RSVP. We don't need a yes or no. It's like, hey, this is where it's happening. Be there or don't be there. It's all good. And I think that is really powerful. The other thing I'll say, and I'm curious if you've experienced this. How long have you been in Austin now? 8 days, 7 days?
I've been in Austin, I think I've been a bit longer. I think I've been here like 10, 12 days now.
Great. Yeah. Well, the way you're moving, it's probably feel like a month because of all the things you're doing, which I respect.
Met everyone.
But one thing that I always heard about Austin before I moved here, and maybe it wasn't until I moved here and I heard people kind of joke about it, but this city is known to be kind of like a city where like you meet someone and then within 20 minutes they're telling you their deepest, darkest traumas. And like, once again, the right container, it makes sense. But I have been in environments where, it's more of like a public setting of like, 50 or 60 people. And there's like these things that, there's like, I don't want to say there's levels to it, but there's like things have these topics and are really, really like,
there's a lot of nuance to them.
They're heavy. And there's a lot of nuance to them. Yeah. So it's I guess what I'm trying to say, it's being mindful about the time and place of where, this is like the container that I think it's appropriate. If we were out, outside of this studio and like we met 3 people, I wouldn't be like telling them certain things because it's just like,
hey, you got to tell me this shit.
You got to warm up to it,
I like the thing of heavy because when I think about the heavy, it's like if you put a lot of weight on your back in a barbell squat.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of weight on there.
Yeah.
And you just fuck around and go down and up without thinking about shit. You're going to snap some shit up, man.
Yeah.
So
it's being mindful about where, because the other thing, if we think of it from heavy, is when you tell these things to people, you're passing on the weight. And in the right container and space, it doesn't feel like weight. It feels like they're if anything, they're helping you balance out the weight. So that 400-pound dumbbell, I come in and now I'm assisting you, and now we feel like we have it together. But if it's in the wrong space, the wrong container, and it's just like put on someone, it can feel like you just pass them the 400-pound barbell.
Yeah, which is why I think, and I know you agree, that's why the work's so important.
Yeah. It's. Yeah, I mean, you gotta you got to kind of throw yourself in the deep end and see where it takes you.
Yeah, especially in the safe places.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise, this thing that I've been seeing a lot recently is people like reopening traumas and not closing anything. And I feel like it's been a bit of a topic recently of just like being careful, like where you go and do things because you don't want to like reopen the same thing again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I find like for me that I've been in patterns where I've like had that before and it's been open and I haven't been able to like close a thing properly. Have you ever experienced something like that?
I know exactly the experience you're talking about. The only, I mean, there's probably some stuff in between, but what comes up is when I graduated college in 26, that was a gnarly head crack. Hopefully the camera can zoom in for that part. That was you've got to cut to that camera and show the wild thing that I just saw from my peripherals. The thing that comes up, and once again, I'm sure there's a lot of many things along the way, but it would be when I graduated college in 2016. And this girl and I kind of split ways, and I was like heartbroken, and like I just kept reliving in that experience and what I could have or what should have or what she didn't, like on and on. And the work that I've been diving to since October is Joe Dispenza's work. And I love that work because I don't know how familiar you are with his stuff, but
I've read a couple of his books.
Man, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, by far the most important book I've ever read in my life. And what I've taken from his work is, there's a time and place where you gotta look at the past. You gotta dig into the traumas and the things that have played a role in making you who you are. But at some point, that needs to be compartmentalized, and we now need to put the energy into where do we go from here, right? I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like, I forget how he says it. It's so beautiful, but it's like what you give energy and attention to ends up becoming your reality, right? So it's like, once again, I'm not dismissing or saying you can't talk about the traumas. Like, that's why when the moments come, I share about the truth from years ago and then I move on from it and I don't milk it for the entire conversation. But at some point, it's like what has happened, right? And now we need to focus on where do we go from here? And I think that has been a huge help for me in closing my own loops that want to keep running what used to be or whatever the past was. And that helps me then start to look into the future of like, what is it that I want to become? What do I want to take from these lessons or these experiences? How do I want to, as a metaphor, like lock the vault and throw the key in the ocean and move on and not carry that weight with me?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And to do that, you've learned a bunch of tools. And even like before we jumped on this podcast, you've had like a crazy busy day. Things been chaos. You got in here and you're like, dude, let's do 2 minutes. Let's get grounded.
Yeah.
I need to get connected to my breath before this because my brain's going like 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And even just saying that, I feel takes a lot of confidence, a lot of self-assurance, and a lot of, practice doing the work. Because some people be like, oh, okay, let's just go straight into it and then just sit being wild instead of being able to actually speak to something. And that's a tool that you have.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
But once again, not to cut you off, but it's so interesting because as I'm driving here, I'm like, all right, when I get there, I'm going to ask Corey if we can drop in. And then there was that thought of like, what is he going to think of me asking this? And then I immediately knew, I was like, he's going to fucking love it. Because once again, dude, my reality has only attracted the men that are aligned with who I am at my heart. There are very few people that I've met in Austin, men-wise, that if I was meeting them, they wouldn't be meeting for a podcast. But if I was meeting them for coffee and I was like, hey, good to see you. Can we do a 2-minute meditation? They'd be like, what? Like, which is fine. That there's no judgment. There's no, I'm better, you're worse. There's nothing. It's just not the same wavelength. So it's just funny how we were discussing earlier about just environment and reality. And I knew you would not even second guess it. Like, so. And I met you on Tuesday, and we met through Corey, who owns the studio, that recommended. It's just like, I mean, divine. I don't know. Like it just.
Oh, it's crazy. There's a lot of I went to a men's circle last night. Oh man, it was so good to just receive. I had like the best time, and it was crazy because when we were there, a thing that was brought up commonly was, out in the real world, when we're not in here, like a lot of people don't get to experience what we experience in here. And yes, that's so true for most people, like for most, but I'm like, that has not been my reality for years. And I think that when you get into the point of learning these tools and learning these practices and practicing them, it is the whole manifestation thing. It's like your whole mind and your sight sort of just, you divert your eyes from anything else that isn't something conscious and present. So you're just never around it anymore.
For sure.
And then you start opening your eyes to what is more present and aware and has more consciousness and brings more fulfillment and joy. That's not going out and getting pissed, or not being so stressed out that you can't even think properly with the boys and you have to go out and do something crazy to release, or jump into endless amounts of sex and porn. Yeah. Right. To move through it.
It's also interesting too. I bet there was, and I don't know if they shared this or not, I bet you there was someone in that men's circle last night where that maybe was their beginning intro to
it's definitely
men's work.
Yeah. They were saying, they're like, this is our first time here. And they're like, whoa.
Which first time there, but then the question is this your first time doing men's work? Is this your first time, like, that would be my next follow-up, is I'd be curious to know, like, there are men's circles that I've been to. It's the first time being there, I would say, but it's not my first step into the world of the men's work. So what's also beautiful for you is, and myself, is then it becomes from this place of being the participant to then having the skill sets, the tools, and confidence to say, hey, I may not have it all figured out. I'm the student, I'm not the master, but I feel in a place where I can guide and lead all you other men as well. So that's where it becomes like this beautiful yin yang, where it's like, I love facilitating, co-hosting, guiding, but damn, do I also enjoy being a participant and just being able to. But you need both. Like, the coach needs to coach, the leader needs to also be the participant. It's important to be on both sides of it.
Oh God, I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I was like, they said something at the end and they asked some question. I was like, man, it is just so good to receive from the guys in such like a positive way. Do
you have this reality in Australia?
Yeah.
That you've created the same type of...
But a lot of in Australia, because I have like really close friendship groups. Like, I have the most amazing friends in Australia, whether they're from Gold Coast or Adelaide, because I'm from two places. And I have like my community and all the men in that, and there's other communities that come off the side of that. It's like, I would say, like, I haven't prioritized going to other men's groups, because when I'm there, I've got like my friends.
Yeah, you've already got your core.
And I've got my own. But going today, last night, I was like, just different experience. I got to prioritize doing this. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so nice. And because I'm here and I'm traveling and I want to meet people, I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, oh.
So you're saying you need to prioritize, as in when you go back to Australia, you want to prioritize going to men's circles where you don't know anyone?
Yeah. Yeah, be a participant. Oh my God. So
you're not a participant in the men's circles that you're part of back home, or you're always the one that's leading it?
Usually always the one that's leading.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so always, because it's grind, hustle, get this, move this.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I see. For me, but I've put a few on my radar, but then like I come over here, right? Because I was like, I'll do this at the end of the year. And then this happened and I was like, I'm going to go to Austin. So I was like, sweet. Because it was on my to-do list. So like, regardless if I was in Australia or Austin, I would have got around it.
Do you live in the part of Australia where you grew up in, or no?
No.
Okay. That would have been I would have wanted to dig deeper. And how do you but like, if I was living where I grew up, it's not that it wouldn't be possible my reality wouldn't feel like this, because I would be getting pull from, respectfully, friends that I grew up with, where it's just completely different interests, different backgrounds at this point, which doesn't mean they're not my friends. It's just, it would be different. So
I relate to you. I feel like my potential got capped. Nothing to do with anyone around me. It was just me, because I found it really hard to say no to things, whether it was a wedding, a birthday, an event, a this thing and that. And it was always like, I have to wear these emotions. And I'm like, I just need alone time. I need to be in my own head. And so I need to go. So I went. But it's crazy, because then you spend 2-3 years in a location and then the same thing happens. And you're like, okay, so two things. I can either learn the skill and be able to like center and go through this and not wear on everything, so that I can feel that and still grow and just be really disciplined on myself, or, just move on again for a little time and then come back. But I feel like Gold Coast in Australia is like, it's like the Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was interesting. The year and a half before I moved from LA to here was kind of this new identity that was starting to, become, and, not drinking. So I was, before that, like in the deep scene of LA, going to the parties, doing that whole lifestyle. And then
What was that like, by the way? Was it just mental?
Candyland. I look at LA as Candyland. It's it's magical.
It's magical.
It's a playground of opportunity, and I just was so inspired. I mean, you're talking about like the hub of opportunity for the creator / like this type of work. Maybe not men's work exists out there, but like I was so fascinated to, be in neighborhoods where I knew like these are where the top talent of the world is living. And without going too deep, but like, for instance, the Palisades, which was the biggest part of the fire in LA, I've walked those neighborhoods. Like those neighborhoods, I mean, you're talking every house minimum $3 to $4 million US. I don't know what that is in Australian.
It's like 6-7 million. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just was beautiful, immaculate. And you go take that same neighborhood and you put out here in Austin, and those houses are literally 500,000 or 600,000. But it's because of the location, the city, everything that it puts it on this pedestal. And so you have the highest caliber of fame. And I never was like chasing it. I definitely like found myself in certain times where I was like, am I going to this because I actually want to go, or it's just because like X person's hosting it and I have an invite? But I'm so happy that I got to experience it, because it was a long time dream of mine to live in LA. And there's a 2-year period where I really got to experience like the whole like party in the hills out till 5 a.m. like, like $50 million real estate house, like going to a party. It's just like,
yeah.
So I call it Candyland because there's just so much opportunity, bro. But I digress. I don't even remember how I got there, but I got there because what I was trying to say was, in that year and a half limbo of letting go of this old identity, stepping into new identity, there were invites, there were things that I had to get better at saying no to because I knew it wasn't aligned with me. And then I moved to Austin with this very clear idea of who the next version of me is trying to become. And so then all I did was attract men that I was inspired by. And the things that I say no to, it tends to just be because from a place of like bandwidth or not trying to overwhelm myself. But if I could go to every single thing I've gotten invited to here, I would, because it's in alignment with who I am and what I value.
Yeah, so cool. One thing that I've definitely experienced after like meeting the guys at your run club and then going to the men's circle and just be like interconnecting with like each person has just been this like immediate lock-in. Like it's not like, it takes a few sentences or whatever it is. It's like there's just immediate snap.
You just drop right in.
Of just like boom. And I've been like, wow, this is really welcoming. And I don't think it's a city thing. I think it's a societal thing of just how many people here are doing the work.
For sure.
And I find that it's, and what I mean by doing the work is like learning about emotional intelligence, understanding your conditions and your patterns, how you can show up more free in your body without having to be scared and, look people in the eyes and, not divert your eyes and create the big asks, network and connect people for whatever reason, right? It's just like, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
And I found like that happening has been really, I felt a lot of connection. Like good quality connection. I'm like, oh, this is like something that I feel that in other areas of my life I've just craved.
Yeah. It's honestly inspiring to hear like what you've been able to drop yourself into in a brand new city where maybe you knew a few people and you're here traveling by yourself. Like, bro, that's insane. Like I would be willing to argue and bet that the depth that you will feel from when you got here to when you leave in that time frame of 2 weeks or whatever it is, some people who move to a new city not feel that once in a year. And it's a testament to who you've become, the intentionality of where you're placing yourself and the people you're meeting, which then creates the ripple. But dude, that's pretty amazing to hear, like how men's circle. You've been doing all the podcasts. You went to the men's run club. Like, you're just like throwing yourself in all the right environments, bro. It's so cool to hear. And Austin is like, I didn't really know until I moved here. Like, this is a breeding ground for all of this work. Like, you know, I'm sure you can find it in Chicago. I'm sure you can find it in Miami. But it's just, it's what my reality sees. But there's also reality where we could go out on 6th Street tonight and you can be out to the bars till 2 a.m. And, you know, like, there's that reality too that exists. But the reality that I see, Austin has this work, LA has it, and, you know, there's other parts of the country, but
it's beautiful, man.
It's a great city for it.
It really is. And it's like, I've had so much fun wanting to like place myself like, in the right scenes. And I've just been having a blast just like going in. So thanks for seeing that, by the way.
Yeah.
It was really cool. One of my friends lives here and he was like, I think you've done more stuff in the last year, like that I've done in the last year in like 4 days. That was funny. One thing that I liked going to, I don't know, have you been to the Ecstatic Dance Center here?
No, but we chatted about it at the coffee.
Dude, you got to come tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got time.
I can't tomorrow, but it sounds incredible from what you were sharing.
You got to go.
It's like a 2-hour experience.
At some point, yeah. It's just, you just walk in there and everyone's just like dancing like crazy. And I'm like, I'm definitely going to go again tomorrow. Like, I just didn't realize.
Yeah.
Like, how good it was. I'm like, but like, what place do you go to? For everyone listening, Ecstatic Dance is like, there's just a room, they play random songs, everyone's in their own energy, like usually eyes closed or chilling, and then everyone just moves their body in a way that they want to, and you like don't disturb anyone, and you sort of chill unless there's sort of like this like, you know, kind of make eye contact and you like kind of nod and you're like, yeah, we could have a bit of a boogie together.
Yeah.
And it can get like it can feel really uncomfortable if you haven't done it before. Like, where the hell has just an ecstatic dance house that just does ecstatic dance all the time?
It's like 9 a.m. or like, what time is it? Like 11?
10 to 12 on
10
a
to 12 on a Sunday, yeah.
Like,
you go to a dance from 10 to 12 on a Saturday night, and there's going to be some, like, you know, people are trying to grind and do some freaky stuff. This is like 10 to noon. There's like kids, I think you told me about.
Yeah,
like, people, you're just in your own environment.
In the 80s and shit. Like,
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I'm like, it's just part of like what it's like.
Wow.
Like in Austin, of just like, what? It's everywhere here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane.
The city's inviting for what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Like
really
there's no limits to just being who you are and not being judged for it.
So much going on. I think I had like 2 invites tonight to just all this different stuff. And then I've been like in this Telegram group, in this WhatsApp group, and then this other app that people use. And everyone's just in there just throwing shit that's like happening. And I'm like, this is overwhelming, because in Australia there's like one thing that happens every 2-3 weeks.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like in my world in Australia, I'm like, holy hell, I gotta make a decision around this.
Wow.
I'm stressed. Can we meditate for 2 minutes? I need to make a decision, right?
It's a good problem to have, given you're traveling here, and maybe you know you have that friend and you've met a few other people, but it's honestly so inspiring to hear that you've already just dropped in and connected with that many people so quickly.
It's wild. But what I want to know, because that's like a tool that I have.
Yeah.
It's like a tool and a skill that I have where I've learned how to just kind of like put myself into
For
environments and situations. And I feel like one of the tools that I've learned that I'm really proud of is working on my energy enough that when I go somewhere, I'm really clean, I'm really calm, I've got a big smile on my face, and people just come to me. I don't even do anything. I just chill, and the next minute someone asks me a question or something happens, and then
it just ripples.
It just ripples, right? And it's like, I actually don't do anything, I just rock up. And that's like a good skill. But talking in terms of tools, because we had the 2-minute meditation, and then I was like using that as a tool. What are some tools that you have learned that you found extremely beneficial, that you've been able to help other people with, that have just, you know, really helped them?
The immediate one that comes up, and you were just kind of saying it, which is helping people set better boundaries and being able to say no. I think that's a massive tool that will create freedom, peace, more rest, truly like joy. Like the amount of, you know, people that I've chatted with, worked with, whatever, that feel they have to say yes to every invite or thing. And so they build out this calendar where it's just constantly running around. And the only reason I was a little flustered coming here was, and I loved it because my buddy was so grateful and giving me so much time, was, you know, I thought I was going to be with him for an hour, and it ended up being like 2.5 hours, and he was there to help me, which was incredible. He was so generous for it. But usually I would be so much more intentional with, like, I'm not going to build out my days where I feel overwhelmed. Like, it's ultimately me that's saying yes to all these things, right? So I think that's probably the one tool that can unlock new levels of peace, joy, happiness. But in the process of doing that, you have to let go of the narratives of like, what are people going to think? I'm going to let them down. Like the people pleasing, the feeling bad. Like I've just always looked at it as like, if I don't take care of myself, who's going to do it for me? And so just the same way you were, sharing about how, that time where maybe you were like feeling bad saying no to the wedding or the birthday party, or because you were kind of in that limbo of being around people that you used to hang with, but they don't really align with you anymore. I think that if you can master the tool of saying no, all you're going to do is create more time and energy to do the things that actually matter. And, I'd say that's the number one tool.
What's some more? I just want to know. Just some more tools. One's in the moment, like that drop in 2 minutes. Beautiful. Yeah.
No I like to call it the basics, the things that we hear and know, but we can sometimes either like take it for granted or think, no, it can't be that simple. Like the tools that for me that happen on a daily basis that make me feel my best self and I'll lean on more if I am not feeling good would be eating clean, drinking a lot of water. I stopped drinking alcohol. Like really mindful with sweets. It kind of goes with the eating. Daily sweat. Funny enough, I haven't sweat today, but I likely will tonight. If not, I try to give myself at least one day off the week. Meditation. And I would say the next one would be those random moments where that 2 minutes like wasn't meditation. Like when I say meditation, usually I'll carve out 20, 30 minutes a day to sit down and sit for that duration.
Stillness.
It's for stillness. But then there's those, I'd call them like little mindset, like mindful resets, where if I need a 2-minute break in between a project, a phone call, put the timer on, close my eyes wherever I am and just breathe. And that can be it. Even driving here, I didn't have music on and I was trying to be mindful of like focus on driving, but just tap into your breath and try to reset and calm yourself. That's another weird hack is like my partner and I rarely drive with music on. Either we're chatting or we just love the stillness of, we both are very busy people and sometimes getting from A to B and just quiet solitude can be exactly what we need.
That's a tool, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Give me a tool for yourself. Maybe the one that I haven't shared.
I like self-reflective writing. Yeah. I think every time that I've done any sort of self-reflective writing, I've just...
Is it daily for you?
No. It's more...
When you need it.
A little bit more fluid. And I feel that... But for me, recently, because I've been doing more regularly, it's close to daily, that it's like, oh, this is a habit and a practice, just works for me. And it's just something that works. Yeah. And there's a difference. I use like self-reflective writing, which I actually learned at uni. Like, and they taught me to write by speaking how I feel around things. I felt this for this thing specifically. So self-reflective writing isn't just like a journal prompt, isn't just writing down a list. It is like, oh, I did this and it made me feel X, Y, Z. And that is incredible. And then I like musings. I call them musings, is where I just get like a piece of paper and I just start just mapping shit out. Sort of like mind maps, but not exactly, because I'm not doing a map for my mind or a map for my business or something. I just start going, oh, if this connects to this thing, which is on top of my mind, and connects to this thing, this would equal this, whatever it is. Those have always just worked so beneficial for me, like as tools. And I did a microdosing. So I did like a microdosing meditation visualization session with this woman and her group called conscious.mother on Instagram. And we did the session and we did like a lot
Here
of
in Austin?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Add it to the list of things you've done.
Yeah. He's like, give me everything.
I love it.
But one of my friends, I had him on the podcast, his name's Sean. He's done like the last 2 weeks, and every time I've asked him to hang out or do stuff, he's done more than I have, and I thought I've done a lot. I'm like, what the hell, bro? How do you do that? It's crazy. But we did all this like self-reflective. We did like a self-reflective piece. We did a journal piece. We did all this other stuff, and it was crazy. I wrote down on there, I'm like, I really would like some point this year for some people to reach out to me that are like high level to connect with. And within the last like 48 to 52 hours, I have had like 2 like big dogs in the industry of like that I am reach out. I'm not gonna say anything because it's like secret.
Wow.
Yeah,
We don't need to know.
They reached out. One is like a collaboration opportunity, which is really cool. So it's like I wanted something paid, but I'm like, it's still this is elite.
Foot in the door.
So good. And then the next one is like, you know, a big guest to come down to one of our retreats. And I was just like, it just blew my brain of just being like, wow, with that amount of attention, actually writing that down, being able to see it and making sure that you're doing things aligned with it.
Yeah.
Of just working. And they both saw my content that I've been posting about doing those things. So
you're living in alignment with yourself.
It's fucking crazy.
And it's attracting other people.
Yeah.
It's not about the number of followers. It's not about the money you make. It's about how you feel, and coincidentally, how you feel ripples into how you show up in person online, which people see that. They want to, you know, a taste of it. They want to know how you feel that way, because they're realizing the external things doesn't do that, or the internal things of their feeling aren't doing that. So
it's crazy.
It makes sense.
Yeah. And like, I think when you are, like, things happen. Like, obviously for you and your social media and your podcast, like all of those things, like working and growing, a lot of people look at like you and want to have the results that you have, want to do the podcast like you've done, want to create content like you have. And I went through and I was like binging all your content, and I was like, man, Bobby's just really good at creating content. Like, just in general, like, you're really good, and it's more like an art form for you, like when you're creating it. Like, I saw there's one reel that you had, and you just like filter coffee and you're doing something, and I was just like, oh, this whole thing like looks really beautiful. But what I know is there's a lot of people out there that have started this work, they want to get into this work, they sort of don't really know exactly where to start, and they do know that they want to create content, but they're still like scared. What would you say to them?
I would say, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you're going to do it regardless. And I would say you don't know how the steps you're taking today are actually building on something bigger for the future. I just posted a video yesterday, and the title of it on top was my TikTok story. And I'll share, which is from year 0, which is 2016, to year end of 2021. So call it 5 years, 6 years. I grew my socials on YouTube, Instagram, all the other platforms, a collective of 8,000 maybe. In 2022 alone, I grew my socials 400,000. And the reason that happened was, and it was, you know, you see the hockey stick growth for businesses or creators or insert whatever brand, like it happens, is I was at the right place at the right time, and all the skills that I had been learning, right? Running a podcast for that entire journey, testing YouTube vlogs, getting good at writing scripts, recording voiceovers, all that experience came to a singular moment where TikTok was starting to pop up. And I was like, why don't I didn't say this. I had encouragement from someone else, looked me in the eye and was like, you need to go all in on TikTok. And so I was like, okay, let's take in all the skills of vlogs, of writing scripts, of recording my audio, and let's make a TikTok vlog. And it blew up, and then I kept rolling with it, and then the content skyrocketed. So I share that as like, you see the present day version of my content, but like, all I've done is just put one foot in front of the other and just kept creating. And even if you go look at 2022 to now, my Instagram or TikTok in 2022 were, every post was thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. And it's the engagement now is not even a thousandth of what I got then, but I haven't stopped because I know, once again, the right time, the right moment, the right piece of content, it'll hit. And I'll take whatever that is and run with it. But I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing on this planet. If you gave me $100 million tomorrow, I would still be doing this work. So if we're speaking to creators specifically that are interested, if it's something you really want to do, you just got to do it. And you got to trust the process that one foot in front of the other, you're going to figure out your lane, your name, and you know, there's even resistance when I posted the TikTok video yesterday about my perspective on TikTok getting banned. And, you know, why am I going to post this? Like, there's so many other people posting videos. Why is anyone going to watch mine? Like, there's all that critic still, years in, 7, 8 years in as a creator. But then I check myself and I remind myself, that's just a part of me.
Yeah.
The real part I want to listen to is, Bobby, why not? What could happen?
Man, I want to speak on this because I had one of my clients voice note me today, and he said to me, I'm trying to shorten it because he sent me like a long message, but he said something along the lines of this. He's like, all right, I know I want to do something in the influencing space or the e-commerce space. And I know that it's going to come from creating content. And I want to do it through my personal brand. And I want to get started. But for some reason, like I'm in flow, I'm crushing it. I crush my gym. I do like my work. I do like my meditation. I do all these things. But then when it comes to creating content, I just go blank. I can't do anything. I don't create anything. I don't post anything. And I just get fucking frustrated at myself. And I do nothing.
Path of least resistance. So I have no context to his background as a creator, but
so he hasn't created really anything,
which is fine. So what I would do if I was him is find a creator that's making content that you're really inspired by, that you would love to create, and use that as a test model and try to create something similar with your own spin to it. Everything that you see from me present day is a one-on-one of me, but that's coming from all these inspirations of other creators, and it's mixed into this pot and then published as Bobby Hobert. Like, the written copy is one of one, it's mine. The voice is clearly me. The shots are me. But I just pay attention to the landscape of what's working for other creators. The reason my TikTok had that hyper growth was because I saw other people making these vlogs and it was doing really well. And I was like, I can make my own version of that. And so I made one morning routine video that did 4 million views in a month and grew my TikTok from 1,000 to 40,000. And I was like, whoa. Why is it that I've recorded so many morning routine podcasts and Instagram photo posts, and like I got more views on that video in 1 hour than I did it collectively on all those, right? So I would just encourage that person to just look at the landscape of what content inspires him.
Yeah.
Use that as a test. Yeah. Create your own version of it. Keep doing that with other creators until you find the content that you're excited to create. There's a lot of different styles of content I could create. I don't, because I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy the process of making it. Yeah. So I would encourage him to find something that inspires him and try to replicate it, and not copy it word for word or shot for shot, but take inspiration and say, hey, if this concept and style worked for him or her, it probably could work for me, so why not try it?
Oh, I love that. And as well, I find like script writing such an art and a skill. Like it's such an art and skill to follow. And I think people don't understand what it's like in terms of the awkwardness of writing down whatever your script formula is and then trying to remember it or putting it up somewhere, looking back and forth from a camera whilst you got a light on you. And then you're like, all right, I got to turn this bit on, write it, say it, remember it, however it is.
Here's the hack. Here's the hack.
I was going to say, how do you do it? Like, how do you go through and get over the cringe?
I don't make those videos for that reason. Okay. So I, once again, self-awareness, having the background of podcasting, which was different. This is different, right? It's just raw in real time. But there were solo podcasts that I would record. I'd write the whole script because I wanted to be intentional and mindful of everything I said, and I would read it verbatim to a camera. So I was like, I'm going to do that for TikTok. And so I've tried doing those videos where like the copy's off screen. I read it, look back, cut it up so it looks like one smooth piece. And I just didn't enjoy creating it. What I did enjoy creating was having a blank piece of paper, being extremely mindful and specific about what I wanted to say, typing it up, writing it, editing it. Cool, that looks good. Grabbing my little iPhone attachment mic, recording the audio, and then taking B-roll footage and putting it on top to visually be appealing to the consumer. So if you're sitting there saying, it's hard for me, once again, what I just said, there's certain types of content I don't make because I don't enjoy it. That's one of them. Another one is I don't really care for the green screen. I've tried doing green screen and I don't like chopping up random clips that I find online. Like I like B-roll vlogs, my lifestyle, and then I recycle a lot of those videos. So I would say if you don't enjoy that content, don't make it. You don't have to.
That's so good. And from everything that we've said today on the podcast, if you would like to give people something that you challenge them to do today, this week, that they could do after listening to this podcast, they can take action on, what would it be?
A challenge.
Yeah, challenge them. Because some of my listeners, man, will be like, I'll fucking do it. Some of them will literally go and take action on it.
Well, this challenge will be fun because it's only you who's going to know of the answer to this, which is ask yourself, what is the biggest block or energy vampire in your life right now? Example being, I look at my phone too often. Another example being, my friend Johnny just leads me to being the person I don't want to be. Another example being porn. Another example being, alcohol. Like, you name it. Ask yourself, what is the energy vampire that is your biggest distraction in your life right now? And I would challenge you to go 7 days straight, cold turkey that shit from the moment you hear this episode. I don't care if it's Tuesday, 9 a.m. I don't care if it's Friday at 5. If you're really serious about change, take that challenge for a week. And at the end of that challenge, if you do not feel better, go back to what it was. You have my permission. But if you feel the slightest difference, go another week. And then from there on out, you can make the choice of how long you want to keep going.
Bobby, where can people find you?
Instagram, TikTok. Well, TikTok in the U.S. is supposed to be gone on Monday, but hopefully it'll be back. But just at Bobby, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y, or go to my website, bobbyhobert.com.
Thank you, my bro.
I do have one other favor.
Let's go.
If you're listening to this podcast and you made it to this moment, it's very, very clear that you enjoy this show. You enjoy the content Corey's producing. And I want you to know, as someone who's produced 400 plus podcasts, there's a lot of time, energy, attention, money that gets invested into creating this stuff. The smallest thing that you can do that will actually have the biggest ripple is leaving a rating or review on whatever platform you're listening in on. If you want brownie points, share this on your Instagram story and tag him. It really does make a difference in growing the show. If you're enjoying it, please do that.
Bro.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, bro.
Pleasure.
Thanks for being on.